Hello, everyone. This is Martin Willis. This is a little pre-show talk. I'm just telling you that this is normally our show on Tuesday nights, but this is actually Saturday night. And the reason is because the guests that I have coming up, Mark Monroe and Paul Crowder, their series premieres on Sunday night, the 27th. And so I'm talking with him in just a minute. But in our regular time slot on Tuesday, I have Linda Zimmerman. And because it's Halloween week, we are going to be talking ghost stories, a little bit different. It's not going to be a UFO show. And that's coming up as the regular scheduled show on Tuesday. Thank you and enjoy this show. Hello and welcome to the show. I'm Martin Willis, your host. We have a special show for you this evening. We're going to be introducing Beyond UFOs and the Unknown. I had to make a quick look over to make sure I got that right. And that premieres Sunday, October 27th at 10 p.m. Eastern and Pacific. And I have two people involved with that, and I'll bring them right in. Paul Crowder, welcome. And Mark Monroe, welcome to both of you.
Thanks so much.
And one of the benefits of doing this show is, I get to see the screeners before others. I love that. And I was very impressed with your show. And as I was joking, I saw that my iPhone made it into your film. And that's because I was at the DC hearing and in the back filming the whole thing. And it was so funny. They told us when we were going into the hearing that no pictures, couldn't even take pictures or filming or anything. And then once I walked in, I talked to the guy at the end of the aisle who was managing everything. And he says, hey, knock yourself out as long as it doesn't interfere with anything. So I would have been better prepared, but at least I did get it all in film. That was exciting. So that's basically episode one. You talk about that, but I want to ask you both and what your involvement was. But I'll start with you, Mark. What was your interest in this topic? I imagine you have some of an interest to even do something like this.
Yeah, I think I can't say that I'm I've had an experience. I'm not someone who had an experience as a small child. I've been chasing answers ever since. I am curious about the world, and I was totally fascinated, particularly with the big storytellers of our time, Spielberg or Lucas, and these big films about, space, about life, about our lives, about other potential lives. And so you would say I was interested in the story in that sense, right? And of course, over the last 5-6 years, the world has changed so dramatically.
Hasn't it? Yeah.
To be interested in it when I was a teenager, it was something as a teenager you could do, just like you were interested in Mad Magazine or something. It was just kind of like a weird little hobby or whatever. And you would think that people who were kind of dedicated to it, they were pushed to the margins of our society. They were weirdos. They were strange thinkers. They were stigmatized. All that, right?
Yeah.
But once the government says, hey, there's something going on that we can't explain, and one of the possibilities could be another life form or science and technology that we don't think exists by human hands. Once that's out of the bag, the genie is out of the bottle. Suddenly now, on this show alone, no one said no to us. The idea that 6 or 7 years ago, I could have called Adam Schiff's office or Nancy Gillibrand's office and said, hey, would you like to talk about UFOs? The idea that they would say yes, right, is very strange, but they did. So I think that tells you the new world we're in. So in that sense, yeah, I'm very interested.
Yeah. It was a, I started doing the show in 2011, and I saw the whole shift. As a matter of fact, I do believe that one of the kind of high profile jobs that I had ended, and I found out later that it could have had to do. The person said I have to watch what I do in my personal life, and the only thing I can think of is UFOs. So I mean, there was that stigma, and so yeah, ever since 2017 in December, everything has changed, and so many people are looking at the topic, and scientists have gotten involved, which I love that, and also like you're saying, Gillibrand. She's not embarrassed to talk about it, and it's a bipartisan issue. I'd love to see AOC and Matt Gaetz getting along. It was pretty interesting. But
Absolutely.
Yeah, Paul, it's your turn. How about yourself?
Well, I've always been interested in the subject. 2001, beautiful film. I love, always looking at the sky when the guys were on the moon for those few years. I kept looking out. Can I see them moving on? I was just fascinated with the whole space thing. Close Encounters came out. I'm first in line to go see that, and fascinated by it. Always have been, always wanted to see one, never have. I sit on my porch out here staring at the skies every night. Come on, guys. When's my turn? But my wife's seen one, and it's her birthday today, by the way. But she's had an experience she can't explain. And, there's no reason why she would lie about it, in any fashion. What's very, very interesting is the two friends of hers who were in the car with her don't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
And they went, this object was flying by the car. They were driving. The driver woke up screaming, "It doesn't have regulation lights. It doesn't have regulation lights." Freaking out. They're all like waking up and then they see this, what was like pink light object traveling to the side, goes in front of the car, sits over the freeway. They drive right underneath it. I'm convinced she's been abducted. Drove right underneath it, and she turned around and looked out the window, and it shot off up into the sky. So, wow. But the other two guys don't want to talk about it at all.
You must have heard of the missing time thing. Did she talk about anything peculiar?
Like no. No. I mean, I just tease her that she's been abducted for that reason. But no, I've always been fascinated with the subject, and what has been great is that with all these, with the technology we have now, there are a lot more cameras in their hands. That's great. Sadly, AI's come out now, just destroying the landscape because there's so easy to make fake ones now. So we've gone back to the days where people used to use their Super 8 and throw discs across the thing, or
exactly
strings to do their own thing. So it's like always taking that weird turn. But what has happened, especially since 2017, when the articles came out and the government admitted about the program and that all came to light, was academia came in. Everybody who had been there doing it, but had to do it very, very carefully, tread carefully because of the stigma that used to be around. That went away. The stigma was gone. You've got Navy pilots saying, "I've seen these things." You've got people that you can't, dismiss them as some crazy person, like just like sitting in a field somewhere. These are serious people who have said it, and the government have said, yes, these programs exist. Then they backtracked and they've done their wonderful government jig that they do. But it's now it's able to be completely explored in every fashion. And they're coming up with all these wonderful things that we didn't know. I mean, but if you go back through Jacques Vallée's history, and Puthoff as well, and other people that we have, they've all been studying these things for decades, multiple decades, writing books on these things. There are papers and everything then they haven't been scared to talk about it, and they've been deeply involved and with the government and all this stuff. But now that they can really, really explore. You've got, that's in our show, Gary Nolan, a scientist, deeply involved with this whole subject now. Having people show up in his office to say, "Hey, we're from the government. We want you to look at these things, that these scans, brain scans, they're all connected to UFO events." And he's like, Really? Where's the camera? I'm getting punked here. And no, it was a real thing. And so, it's fascinating that all these people now come forward and can talk about it openly, write books about it, put it in the newspaper, put it on TV. We can make these shows and no one's going to go, yeah, right, guys.
That's right. Yeah. And it's really amazing if you think about, the way you're talking about it's progressing, how, I'm not even embarrassed. I'm a fine art antique appraiser. And if I feel comfortable with someone I'm talking in the house, I'll go there. And before I was scared to death to go there, like I'd be pushed out of the house or something. But anyway, going back to the AI, I've been told, and I don't know if this is true or not, but I've been told that they can, there's a way to figure out if the hoax images and videos are made with that, but I'm not sure. There's some type of signature that you can tell. I hope so. That would be nice.
Yeah, right now the quality you can tell. Oh, come on, haven't got the tracking quite right. A lot of people are doing them cheaply, but if somebody wanted to spend a lot of time, I mean, we will go to the theater and we're watching a lot of stuff these days that they're doing a lot of stuff in front of the green screen and we're believing what we see. So they could be easily faked. Yeah, as far as there being a signature, I don't know. The key thing is the guys, the pilots, and those people. They're not making AI videos.
That's right. Yeah,
and doing the real thing.
Yeah, I love listening to the pilots, Ryan Graves, and other people you've had on your episodes there. But I mean, it's really quite amazing. And I think that. The thing that I think is really important is that there's nowhere in your episodes that I saw, the 2 shows that I watched, that someone is saying they know what they are, because we really don't know exactly what they are. And I really wonder if the government knows just a partial, I say that on this show, that I think the government may know the partial story, but I don't believe they know the full story. And that's going to make it really hard for disclosure, because how can they tell us they know part of it? I mean, that's not very safe.
Well, I think, Brian Bender, a great journalist, he's Politico these days.
Yeah.
He makes that point, for everyone who's, kind of waiting for disclosure, it could be that they don't know what it is. If they don't know what it is, it's hard to tell the rest of us, right? And so I think they know enough, there's a good chance they know enough to be worried, to be worried for security reasons, to be worried for a lot of reasons. But when you have something that's unexplained, there's a paternal instinct that thinks, oh, the government will protect us, they'll keep us safe. Oh, the government knows all these things, they have all the answers. You think of the Warehouse and Raiders of the Lost Ark. They just put it up there somewhere, But there's every bit, the chance that they actually don't know what it is, that they're just as flummoxed as the rest of us. They may know a little bit more, or have a little bit more in terms of evidence or answers, but a definitive what is it, what are they, I think is hard to imagine.
Yeah, and there's the length of time that I've been looking at this, sometimes when the topic of interdimensional comes up, it kind of makes sense. I mean, that's another thing that is a possibility. And there's Dr. Michael Masters, talks about time travel. And, I mean, it must have been really fun for you to really look into this topic deeply and find these people.
Well, I think because it's broader than just UFOs, or at least potentially more broad than UFOs. And I think, it was tremendously fun to hear Jacques Vallée talk about interdimensionality and the fact that he'd written a fictional work about multiple dimensions, right? Because back in the 60s, you didn't write stuff that you thought would get you in trouble. So you would write it as a piece of fiction, even though the theories within it are theories that you were interested in terms of our world today. And so, the point that he made to us, which always struck me, is that, this is not like quack physics. This is classical physics. This is Nobel Prize winning physics, right? The idea that there are more dimensions that could, be at the foundation of our world is in terms of being human. This is classic physics. And so it's not too wild to take that classic physics model and put it on top of experiences that have no explanation, right? And that's basically what we're talking about here. But that extends to, you know, near-death experiences. That extends to you know, remote viewing or clairvoyance, or the deja vu, or feeling that you sense or know something's going to happen before it does happen, right? Some of us seem to have that, and seem to have that in a provable way, like they're right over and over again. And so why do some of us have it and some of us not? And why do some people see UFOs and some people don't? I don't know if they're connected, but certainly it's a great fun to talk about.
Right. And Paul, to what you were saying earlier, it's very, very common. I've heard it so many times where there'll be multiple witnesses. And even a good friend of mine, when he was young, he was with two other friends, and this thing was right over them and hovering right over them. And they will not, to this day, they will not talk about it. And it's not unusual at all. It's I think it affects everyone differently, and also the reactions are different as well.
Well, it's perception. First of all, it's like what are people going to take seriously? Also, people who don't want to talk about it is because it asks questions they don't want to answer.
Yes.
And especially if you got to think about it from the religious side of things.
Yes.
There's a lot of sort of we don't really go into this in the show, but there is a lot of feeling that a lot of these men in black people, that's where they stem from, because the industry of religion is worth so much money to have to reconsider everything that we've been taught. That's why people get scared to talk about it, because not just that, but all sorts of different things as to what it means and to what I believe. And I want to go on believing the world I lived in before that event. So the best way for me to just continue on this path is to not talk about it, because and just forget it, put it to the back of your mind, and it doesn't happen. And if somebody reminds you, you don't have any recollection. It's because for many, so you've got all those reasons. What is great now, those who were fearful of being stigmatized, they no longer have to be. They can now speak up and say their piece. And
right.
People like Whitley, who was, wrote a book, and people made fun of him forever since his experience and his book came out, Communion. Everybody now believes that all aliens come down here and probe our butts. That's like a continuous thing that everyone makes that joke in any science fiction comedy or anything where there's a butt joke. Even in Guffman, they have the guy who's every day at Sunday at 6 o'clock, my buttocks go numb.
In South Park, how they did him in that.
And South Park, absolutely. Yeah, exactly. And that's exactly what everyone was up against for all those years. That's right. The great thing is now that that's gone, and we can talk about it openly and not be ridiculed and not be fearful. So you have more people coming forward, and now everyone has a camera on their hip. So they're generally in their hand at any given moment. And most of the young people are ready at a split second to get that camera on and getting it. So I wish they'd turn it the right way instead of vertical. But anyway, that gives us more information now. There is so much more stuff that is possibly out there, things that we can see. Fascinating stuff about the volcanoes and them hovering around volcanoes and coming in and out of the ocean and stopping nuclear thing, being fascinating, always being seen around nuclear sites and all this stuff where it's like an elevation of intelligence that's going on. That could be potentially what it's about. The interdimensional thing is not only fascinating, it's been talked about for years, but that makes it so much easier to explain. If you think interdimensional, that's how I went 20,000 light years or 20 million billion light years. I traveled across from that place to here because it was interdimensional. It's not a straight line at a certain speed. So now it becomes a lot more explainable, a lot more understandable, even if we don't understand the physics of anything outside of the 3 dimensions we live in, that we, experience. There's so much more to that. And as Mark said, that's exactly what Jacques Vallée was writing about in the 60s. Now it's the Marvel DC franchise love it because they can just keep re-churning out these things and putting all the actors together because they're all from the multiverse. So it is a fascinating subject, but it's definitely something to explore.
I think going back to the how people talk about it or are unwilling to talk about it, I think a lot of times when something happens in your life that's not explained or it's hard to explain, it can be traumatic.
Mm-hmm.
And I think these experiences are no different than other traumatic experiences. A lot of people don't want to talk about for a spectrum of emotions that they're forced to confront. And so, the fact that Whitley Strieber wrote a book that spoke to tens of thousands, not hundreds of thousands of people in a time when you couldn't just reach out and touch someone through the internet like we have today. We're talking about a time when people had to sit down and write their thoughts down in a letter and send that letter, right? And they went through all those letters, and
I know.
Again, tens of thousands of them were very, very personal items that they had not spoken about to other human beings, but felt comfortable enough, having read communion, to write down, to commit to paper, pen to paper, 6, 7, 8 pages of very confessional stuff and send it to a guy who wrote a book. That tells you, that's a small kind of pilot study, but that tells you, there's a vast number of people who have had experiences probably they can't explain that we haven't learned about yet, that probably have taken them to their graves, right? Because of the inability to talk about it.
And for generations, probably.
For generations. Exactly.
Gary Nolan talks about it in the show. He had an experience as a child,
right?
And
that's the first time I heard him say that.
Yeah, and then he sees the cover, and he's like, "Oh, wait a sec, those are the guys that were in my bedroom." So,
and I got to tell you,
trigger.
Yep. I don't know if either one of you have ever heard about the Allagash incident. This happened up in Maine in late 1978, I think it was, or summer 78. 4 artists. They were up there, and they were out in a canoe basically, and one of them flashed the light, and all they remember is when they got back to shore that the campfire that they had built really high up so they could find their way back to their campsite was all down to coals. And they said, how the heck did that happen? They didn't, so time had passed, but it was several years. I think it was 10 years later, Jim Weiner, that's just the last name, Jim and Jack Weiner, the twins, he got into a construction accident and broke his back, a terrible mess. Was in the hospital forever, and he was reading they were reading books. He kept having these weird dreams and not really understanding. And again, they never even talked about it the next day, what happened. But all of a sudden, Whitley's book came on the library cart, and he saw it, and everything came back to him. He goes, oh my God, and realized what happened. I mean, that book has, so many people have told me that book, those creatures, they've seen them, which is really bizarre.
Yeah, but consistent with it. It's like that image of the cover. It wasn't, like they've all seen different things. They've all seen something that looks like what we're calling the Greys, right?
Yes.
These days, they've all had that image, and that image is. But there's some people saying, yeah, we've been spoon feeding you this image, so you get used to it. So when we reveal them,
pop culture thing.
Yeah. But no, it is. It's triggering to people. They have shut it off, and suddenly these memories come flooding back, and that's what's fascinating about the whole thing. And it's all about the mind as well, what the mind perceives, how we perceive it. I mean, really, our brain works as a bunch of on and off signals. So we could taste and color and everything. What I see as red, everybody else could think it's blue, but I call it red and they call it red. It correlates.
By association.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's all perception. So it was, and what's great is we know we don't know a lot of things. The unknown is real, and as long as I don't think we'll ever know everything, so there's always more to learn. And these stories are going to continue to evolve, and we're going to discover more about them and explain more about them and understand them a little more. But there is definitely a correlation with all of them, with seeing UFOs, near-death experiences, out-of-body experiences, remote viewing, all those things are all in some fashion in here, doing things that a lot of us can't explain or be able to do at the drop of a hat. I mean, remote viewing is another thing that's been going on for decades. And, you know, I know I have friends that can do it, and they can do it, but they clear houses of ghosts and things, have these abilities to make things better in the location. And I just have to say, my friend's got they think there's a poltergeist going on, there's something weird going on, and she says, what's the address? And then she can go there, and you know, has done things that, and explained, when she's explained what was there, everybody else who's been having these experiences with these things says, that's exactly right. It's not like she's just guessing and saying things. She's hitting details that correlate with the people's experiences in these places. So there are people I know that have these, and my daughter has a little bit of it too. She can do some of this stuff. It's you know, I just don't, you know, we don't know. But there are so many things that are so unexplained, which is why we called the show what we did, because it's really difficult to really put a finger on everything.
Right. There's a Sir Isaac Newton quote that goes something like, what we know is a drop, what we don't know is an ocean.
Right.
And I believe that, and I've said this a number of times in my show, we probably don't even know what's going on around us, right next to us. You know, there's probably things going and happening that we can't even imagine or know or see or sense with our senses.
No, apparently, I mean, like with what the pilots are seeing and what they're allowed to talk about, and you know, there's more information. You know, these pilots have come forward with a certain amount. They've released a couple of videos for us, but they have a lot more information and a lot more stuff that they've collected on these events. So they know a lot more than we know. There is a lot more going on than we understand, that we've been told. There's no doubt about that. Yeah.
You know, there's a percentage of people that absolutely have no idea that there was a front page story in the New York Times in December 2017, or they weren't watching the news. You know, for instance, I do run into those people. And my cousin recently, like, she's rolling her eyes, and I said, you never heard about the Pentagon saying, you know, these things are real, whatever they are. They don't know what they are, but they're real. And no, you know, she couldn't believe it. So there is that percentage. And I still think the word needs to get out. You know, people are very busy in their lives. They're looking at their phones, have to, you know, make the mortgage payment and, you know, their bills and things like that. A lot of people don't even really pay attention to this, but I do think it's a lot more than ever that do at this point. But here's the question I'm going to pose to either one of you. And I'm talking about the United States government. Don't you think it's kind of unusual that they know this is happening and they're not spending like a fortune to figure it out?
Well, I mean, the fact of the matter is we don't really know how much they're spending, right? I mean, they really, built a bomber 30 years ago that no one knew about, and they spent billions upon billions doing that, and we had no idea until they, you know, unveiled the thing. And that was 30 years ago. So what have they been spending money on the last 30 years? So we really don't know. And certainly the one thing we do know is that the government is thick as thieves with the defense industry. You know, and those corporations don't, you know, they don't have to, they're not bound by the same transparency issues that the government is. So if the government's in cahoots with one of these big defense contractors, and they've put things there, or they've tested things there, they've built things there, they've created things there, we're never going to know that unless it's unveiled to the public. So this is all part of, you know, what we're learning, you know, post the Go Fast video and post the pilots coming out and saying, wait, there is a program here. There is money being spent, and granted that initial kind of disclosure was a very small amount of money in terms of the government, in terms of an office tracking UFOs. But that doesn't mean that it hasn't been going on for years.
Absolutely.
Deeper and deeper down. You know, I was talking again to Brian Bender, and he's like, you know, certainly there are people high up in the Pentagon. They have no clue what's, you know, happening deep down in the bunkers, right? That was funded 2 decades ago,
Yeah.
right? It's outside of their purview. So
And that black money is disappearing, you know, I mean, it's going
exactly,
somewhere.
exactly.
These
So
that's you know, how Putov tells us in the show that stuff like Project Blue Book, it didn't go away, it just went dark.
Yeah.
They couldn't not keep looking at these things. They had to keep going. They just weren't telling anybody they were doing it, and they're not going to, and they don't have to, because it's all in the case for national security. They're not going to disclose these things, and that's all they have to say. It's because of national security we can't tell you. I mean, these pilots who are seeing these things, that could be our technology. That's a different department that nobody knows about. You know, there's there's always going to be secrecy. There's always going to be somebody higher up, you know, and
Yes.
but I think what we all would love it to be is it's something else. It's something new that we've got yet to find out. You know, we're going to find out more, and we're going to know more about our existence, because that's what it all comes down to. You know, the question we always ask, it says, why are we here? Maybe these guys will be able to tell us, and maybe we get to live forever, because that's what we really want too. So, you know, with all this information, there's a lot of hope in what our futures might be. You know, so I think that's why it fascinates so many people for so long, because that's what we all desire, those things. You know, we want to know more, and we want it to be real. There are, you know, Star Trek was true. Those really are people on other planets. You just beam down to their planet, and there are people, you know, E.T. was real. It's all, you know, Close Encounters was real. It's all fascinating. It's wonderful stuff. And so much of that stuff comes through. I mean, look, somebody told me off the record that, you know, Roswell's for real. That happened, you know. So that's not, you know, that's something that's still mythical. But it really, you know, that happened. There are things that continue to happen. You know, the remote viewing, people remote viewing information that they saw, they were able to describe information that didn't quite correlate. It was 90% correct, but there was something missing. There were some buildings missing. Those buildings were there 10 years later. So they were remote viewing the future. They were so that gives you the dimensions thing again, you know. So it I mean, in every fashion, from it being extraterrestrial to it being something we can do with our minds, that we're expanding our minds to different places and experiencing things for those reasons, that we don't know how to control those. For it to being anything fantastical, it's all fascinating, and it's all unknown, and that's the beauty of it. We know we don't know, so we're open to all these ideas.
What you just mentioned there about someone confirming Roswell, I had a guest on the show. He was in Peru. He was a Marine in Peru in 1997, and there was a downed aircraft. They didn't really know what it was. There was no transponder. They went in the jungle with their Hummers, and then on foot, and came across this teardrop shaped thing that was like wedged in a rock, fluid coming out of it, the whole craft changing colors, liquid changing colors as well. He got some on his shirt when he went up to it. There was a hand hanging out, which is even more bizarre. He's only talked to 2 people, and that's myself and one other, James Fox and Leslie Kane, you know, years ago. He's talked to them in 2001, and then he talked to me. Doesn't want to talk to anybody about it. He had a Men in Black situation actually show up at his grandmother's house. You know, she described these very strange guys in a car. You know, one was sitting in the car and one came to the door. But it goes on and on and on. But what I'm getting at is I had a connection to David Grush. I did get to meet him, but I had a connection to him. And he went and got back to me and said, yes, that is a confirmed situation in Peru in 1997. So it's, you know, it's nice to get some type of confirmation, you know, of these type of things.
Yeah, there's a couple of stories we cover in our thing where, you know, in the beach in Brazil, where they you know, suddenly there's this craft and this leaked material and stuff that they've collected, and that, you know, if it was a secret program, well, why would they leave it in Brazil, you know, on this beach in Brazil? And, you know, another one another one here in America. There's all those different things that get confirmed by the people around them, and now they've actually got the materials. Jacques Vallée has a lot of these materials. Gary Nolan's looked at these materials and dissected them and talked about them. So there are lots of tangible things that leave a lot of questions unanswered, because it's not technology, it's not a way we would this materials we wouldn't mix them in this fashion. That's not how we would make these metals or whatever they are.
Right.
They're not that the elements are foreign to us, but they just wouldn't be put together like this.
That's right. Yeah, that's the metallurgy is. Yeah, there's a lot of study in that, and I mean, who knows what we'll find out. I mean, I guess I'm going to throw this question. Either one of you can answer it. What do you think would be a big enough of an issue for, like, to say the United States government to say, okay, yeah, they're this or they're that? Do you think that they would have to have that you're talking about, the evidence, the metals, very strange? Do you think that would be enough, or do you think it would have to be a known craft, because it's possible that there is already a craft or two or three or four or whatever? But I mean, do you think that in a public forum?
I think if you listen to these pilots, these things that are buzzing around them during these training exercises that have been reported again and again and again by the Navy, by the way, not the Air Force. The Air Force pilots, they're training in the same places. You would have to think they're seeing some of the same things. Mm-hmm. But I think if there's an I don't want to predict it or suggest it, but if there is an accident or if there's a problem, right, with a plane due to one of these things, I think that would cause a tremendous uproar, right? Mm-hmm. If there was some unfortunate incident that happens that causes, a crash or something to happen, because that's why the pilots are reporting them.
Right.
They don't feel safe. These things are flitting about up there, and they're uncertain about, what they're doing and what they're capable of doing while they're flying 300 miles an hour. So if there was something like that happened, I think you would find a lot more, and it wouldn't even be necessarily our military, but if it was made public that any military plane had some sort of incident that caused, the plane to go down or caused an accident of some sort, I think you would find a lot more eyes, money, information coming out about it.
Yeah. We have situations where that supposedly happened, but nothing, that has a lot of evidence. It was a situation where a young pilot in Australia, Valentech, I think his name is. But I mean, there are cases, but nothing where, that's always been the problem. It's been a fleeting situation and no grounded evidence. I mean, there are trace cases, lots of trace cases, though, which are very interesting. But
well, I think it comes down to also this. I mean, if they are a threat to us, right, and they're here, and they are some sort of threat, and they know about it, and they then suddenly say, "Hey, yeah, we didn't know about this." That's not going to shine well on anybody. They can't. Mm-hmm. They can't admit we've known about this awful threat for so long, and we've not protected you by not telling you. So I think there's that part of it where they wouldn't. I would say it's more of a case as they're not a threat, and I think it's more a case of the institutions that get changed. The whole financial institutions to a lot of what's going on, the perception of it all is completely different, and it's going to get changed. And I'm not sure that anybody really wants that to happen, wants everyone's lives to be upended in that fashion. So will they come forward? It's difficult for the government to say, yeah, we knew about it all the time. They'd have to play along with like, oh, well, yeah. It would have to go that way, because otherwise there'd be way too many unanswered questions.
Yeah, they'd have a lot of splaining, as they say.
They would, yeah.
Yeah.
It would be one of those things. Where it's like,
in the meantime, though, you have, I think what you see over the past 5, 6, 7 years, again with the stigma kind of falling away somewhat, and we talked about the letter writers for Whitley Strieber, that was 30 years ago, right? And you have, I think, now more opportunities for more people who have experienced things they can't explain to talk about it.
Oh yeah.
And that number is growing. You know, you look at someone else we visited with in our series, J. Christopher King. He's a younger guy who had an experience he couldn't explain, had multiple experiences he couldn't explain. And, you know, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, he might have turned inward, kept it to himself, become, you know, a different person in the world. But in this world we live in today, in which you can put out your feelings and your thoughts to the rest of the world with a punch of a button, right?
Yeah.
He's created a platform
Yes.
that invites people who have had strange things happen in their lives to anonymously get on the platform and talk to other people, so that they have an outlet, so they have some way to express these emotions that are going through them about these things they can't explain. I think that's fascinating, and I think those numbers are going to grow and grow and grow. You know, when there was a stigma, there was a lot more desire, or not desire, but there was a lot more isolation.
Yes.
And I think removing that isolation, you know, is going to lead to a mood change across our population about what this is. With more and more numbers of people who are open to trying to figure it out, you have less and less kind of standing in the way of the search to figure it out.
Right. Jay's great. I did get to meet him at the DC hearing. Actually, he's been on the show as well. But yeah, I really like what he's doing. And you know, I say this: I've never had any, you know, type of abduction thing. Thank God, because I would be a wreck. I don't know how I could function in life. So I think it's whatever is happening to these people. Maybe it's even something else, but they definitely need someone to share that with, and, you know, share the burden of it and talk about it, and you know, feel like they're not so alone, whatever it is that's happening.
Yeah, I mean, you think about John Mack and the work he did in that space, and the first thing he would say is like, these people don't want to be known. These people don't want to come forward.
Yeah.
This is not something they want to, you know, hang a flag outside their house and proudly promote to the rest of the world.
Yeah.
Right. That's the last thing they want. But to know that it's affecting multiple people, or multiple people are confirming that they believe an experience like that has happened to them, right? It's important for them to be able to speak to someone for them. So I think it's a valuable thing.
Right. Yeah. And, you know, at a lot of the conferences, they will have, you know, experiencers meetings, and they're extremely well attended. Even I was up in Shag Harbor, Nova Scotia, at an event up there a few weeks ago, and the experiencers meeting started at 7:30 a.m. and it was still packed. You know, you would think that it wouldn't be so packed, but it was, even at that time.
Well, I think that's because of the new world we're in. I absolutely believe that.
Yeah, that's right. And Paul, I understand you're poor Paul just had, I don't even know if you want me to say this, but you had surgery recently, and thank you for being a trooper. We're just about done though, Paul.
That's okay. Yeah, no, I just, you know, doctor's orders, don't take it past 40 minutes. So
yeah, I know you have to readjust yourself every so often. So let's talk about your episode 1. It's premiering this Sunday at 10 p.m. Eastern and Pacific, and that's October 27th. And Revelations of the Secret Pentagon Program that's what you kind of talk about in that one. Episode 2, November 3rd. And it's about UFOs, machines in the skies, Jacques Vallée in that one, and also Whitley Strieber. And then 3 is November 10th. And I'm going to have links in the show notes to this and down in the text. And academics and scientists, I love that particular theme. And I know Gary Nolan, like you mentioned, is involved in that. And episode 4 is November 17th. And that is Mavericks, that unexplained phenomenon, like remote viewing. They get into all those other type of things. So this is what you call a limited series, I guess. Yeah. Do you actually want to continue this? Is that a thought?
Well, that's the magic of this whole topic, is that there's so many unanswered questions, and there's so many strange things in our world that really, if you dig deep enough, are really about us, or about, you know, being human. And so I think we'd love to keep going. I think there are a lot of other doors and portals that lead to these questions about human life. UFOs is one of them, and it's a great one, but it's not the only one.
That's right. That's
exactly.
right.
And it's ever evolving. So while we've been making the show, more information's coming to light that we didn't get the show because we were done with production. But we could have made 4 more episodes with what's come to light, in the last 6 months. So it's always plenty to talk about on this subject, and it just completely fascinates more and more the more you look into all of these things. It just wants you just tell me more, because you've just made me think about a lot more other questions now. So,
That's good. I'm doing my job. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm going to play the trailer here. We're going to run the trailer, and then I'll be right back to say goodbye.
I was a fighter pilot, and when we were flying, it looked like a dark cube inside of a clear sphere.
The Pentagon's been lying to us about UFOs.
These cases often don't see the light of day.
People are taking UFOs more seriously.
Now there are documented incidents recording something out there.
It's the biggest news story in the history of mankind.
There it is. And so catch it Sunday, the 27th at 10 p.m. Thank you both so much. It's been a real pleasure. And good luck. And
you're welcome. Thank you.
Continue on.
Thank you so much, Martin. You as well.
All right.
Yeah, you too. I've been, really enjoyed this. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you.
Ciao.
Bye now. All right. So we'll be back Tuesday. And thank you so much, everyone. And remember to keep your eyes to the sky.